Okay, I hope you understood this POXO Act and what are the challenges that we have. Now, we have DNA Technology Use and Application Regulation Bill 2019. What is DNA? We all almost know कि DNA is the fundamental unit of heredity. Basically, the fundamental unit of heredity is gene, ठीक है? But we also can consider that what is DNA? DNA is basically the carrier of the genetic material, or DNA is the thing that is responsible for our physiology, the kind of physiology we have. DNA is the messenger that keeps a continuity between generations and also makes for the differences. Why I look different from my father and what are the similarities between me and my father, that are due to my genetic composition, and that is accounted for DNA. Now DNA is found in where? DNA is found in inside the cells, of course. Okay, I hope this is beautiful, है ना? तो दिस इज डबल हेलिकल स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ डीएनए, क्योंकि आजकल एग्जाम में when the UPSC is like hell bent on asking irrational questions, I would say, so they can ask anything. We should be prepared for that, because last time there was a question about cell wall and cytoplasm and all. So that is like too much of biology that we might not be studying in our regular course of preparation. That is why I have brought this, because figures are our memories are associative, है ना? अगर हम figures देख लेते हैं तो we are able to remember things for a longer period of time. So this is called the double helical structure. Double helical structure because it is two helix, है ना? Okay, pardon me for my poor drawing if I'm not good at it. ठीक है, two helix, ठीक है. So this is called double helical structure of DNA. It was discovered by J.D. Watson and F.H.C. Crick, Francis Crick, J.D. Watson and Crick, Francis Crick, fine, sorry, and they won the Nobel Prize also for the discovery of the double helical structure. ठीक है. तो what is double helical structure? Double helical structure is simple. We have 4 nitride bases: adenosine, thymine, cyto A, T, C and G. This is guanine, ठीक है? This is guanine, this is cytosine, this is adenine and this is thiamine. तो ये 4 न्यूक्लियोटाइड्स कहते हैं, ठीक है? These are basically chemical compounds, ठीक है? उसके हमें केमिकल केमिस्ट्री की डिटेल में नहीं जाना है. This is the chemistry of that, but we have to consider this कि there are 4 न्यूक्लियोटाइड्स. अब हमेशा ही एडिनोसिन और थायमिन का पेयर बनेगा, ठीक है? A and T, और हमेशा ही C and G का पेयर बनेगा, ठीक है? C and G, यानी साइटोसिन एंड गुआनिन. Now you can see cytosine, guanine, similarly adenosine and thiamine. These are called base pairs because this is the base on which this double helix strand is kind of able to stand up, या इसकी वजह से ये बन सकता है, ये ऐसा डबल हेलिकल स्ट्रक्चर स्टैंड कर सकता है. Now this film that is rotating, है ना, this is composed of sugar phosphate that is deoxyribose, ठीक है? तो that is why इसका नेम है deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, we don't have to get into the chemistry of it, but where is it found? Inside the nucleus. This is nucleus, but all the cells, all the organisms do not have nucleus also. There are eukaryotes, है ना, and prokaryotes. तो अगर किसी सेल में, किसी लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म के सेल में न्यूक्लियस है, तो न्यूक्लियस में डीएनए प्रेजेंट होगा. अगर किसी ऑर्गेनिज्म के सेल में न्यूक्लियस ही नहीं है, तो उसका साइटोप्लाज्म में प्रेजेंट होगा. इट इज दैट सिंपल. काइंडली नोट इट डाउन इफ यू हैव द कॉपी, ठीक है? तो This was the detailed analysis, and one important thing is no two people can have same DNA. No two people can have the same DNA structure. ठीक है? And that makes it a very unique property. It's like our fingerprint. It's kind of a biological fingerprint that will be different. One person will never match with the other one. ठीक है? And the second important thing about DNA is it is very stable compound. That is, it can withstand heat, it can withstand ice, and that is why in criminal investigation systems it can be easily traced from even in like worst case scenarios, like in accidents, in case of burns, and in cases of sexual assaults also, from the semen the DNA can be collected. Basically in criminal justice system the DNAs are collected from either hair or the skin or the nail. ठीक है? So that was a basic outline of what DNA is and why we are studying it and what are we going to study in DNA. But now what is DNA regulation bill that we are going to talk about? Why in news? Because the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Science and Technology cleared the DNA technology use and application regulation bill 2019, including over creation of a national data bank of crime scene DNA profiles. Okay, पार्लियामेंट्री स्टैंडिंग कमेटी. ठीक है? तो पार्लियामेंट्री स्टैंडिंग कमेटी की सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है कि नो मिनिस्टर कैन बी अ पार्ट ऑफ पार्लियामेंट्री स्टैंडिंग कमेटी. दो प्रकार की कमिटीज होती हैं. फर्स्ट वन इज कैबिनेट कमेटी. ठीक है? आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू एक्सप्लेन बोथ इन डिटेल, but I will give you a perspective of it, and you will, when you are going to read it from your book, you'll be able to easily understand it. What is cabinet committee and what is parliamentary committee? ठीक है? इंडिया में सिस्टम ऑफ गवर्नेंस कैसा है? पार्लियामेंट, और पार्लियामेंट के अंदर में ही गवर्नमेंट है. अंडरस्टूड? एग्जीक्यूटिव, लाइक कैबिनेट इज द रियल एग्जीक्यूटिव, प्राइम मिनिस्टर एंड द काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स. तो एग्जीक्यूटिव ऑल्सो सिट्स विद इन द पार्लियामेंट. Understood? That is executive in the parliament, our governance. But in USA, for example, executive is different and legislature is completely different. There is a Senate, Congress, and then president and president's secretaries, like Secretary of State. So those secretaries are like ministers of USA. They don't draft laws. Okay? They are executive. Laws are drafted by legislature. Legislature is Senate या Congress. In India, the case is different. We have a Westminster parliamentary system. This system advocates, this system is about having the government in the parliament, यानी executive inside the parliament. Understood? तो अब पार्लियामेंट के लिए अब पार्लियामेंट के पास अपनी कमिटीज हैं. क्यों? क्योंकि पार्लियामेंट एज अ होल इज कंसिस्टिंग ऑफ गवर्नमेंट एंड ऑपोजिशन ऑल्सो, गवर्नमेंट प्लस नॉन गवर्नमेंट. बट cabinet is the government. Cabinet is a representative of government, like party in power या government. अभी बीजेपी is in power. तो बीजेपी is in power, तो बीजेपी या एनडीए कह सकते हैं आप. तो एनडीए की जो भी मिनिस्टर्स हैं, they form the council of ministers. एंड वो काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स में एक कैबिनेट है जो कि कैबिनेट मिनिस्टर्स से मिलके बनती है. मोस्ट ऑल ऑफ द डिसीजंस आर टेकन इन कैबिनेट. बट सिंस कैबिनेट में बहुत सारे मिनिस्टर्स हैं, तो कैबिनेट क्या करता है? डेलिबरेशंस के लिए अपनी कमिटीज बनाता है, कैबिनेट कमिटीज, लाइक कैबिनेट कमिटी ऑन इकोनॉमिक अफेयर्स विच इज चेयर्ड बाय प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ इंडिया. तो अब ये कमिटीज क्या करती हैं? इन कमिटीज में किसी बिल, किसी लॉ पे डेलिबरेशन होता है एंड दे अराइव एट अ कंक्लूजन और द डिसीजन. सिमिलरली पार्लियामेंट ट्राइज टू चेक एग्जीक्यूटिव. पार्लियामेंट का काम क्या है? एग्जीक्यूटिव को चेक में रखना. अंडरस्टूड? तो पार्लियामेंट ट्राइज टू कीप executive in check, and that is why parliamentary committees are formed. अब parliamentary committees में standing committee जो permanent nature की होती हैं and ad hoc committees जो कि temporary nature की होती हैं, the committees which have a very specific purpose. ठीक है? I hope you understood this. Now the parliamentary committee on, not the cabinet committee. Understood? This is not a committee of government. This is the committee of parliament. और parliament क्या है? Parliament is a check on executive. है ना? अगर parliament ना होता तो executive अपने चाहे जो laws बना सकता है. But parliament में opposition भी है. And parliament is a sovereign body, sovereign kind of body, है ना, only limited by the Constitution of India, है ना. Okay. And now, what is the history? First, it was conceived during the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, 2001 ke around, but it was never brought into a law back then. Several deliberations in the Department of Biotechnology took place, and in later on in 2007, Department of Biotechnology formulated a draft law. Department of Biotechnology formulated a draft law, that is DBT, है ना, formulated a draft law, या draft bill, DNA Technology Bill 2007, but due to opposition, it was never actually, it did not came into existence. In 2017, Law Commission prepared a draft bill again, and it was introduced, but it did not pass. In 2019 also, the law was again introduced. It went through all the committees of the parliament. It was introduced, like a lot of deliberations were done onto it, but still it was not passed because Lok Sabha got dissolved. Lok Sabha got dissolved. अब यहाँ पे एक important चीज है कि लोकसभा डिसॉल्व होने से, सी यहाँ पे एक क्वेश्चन बन जाता है पॉलिटी का. कैसे कि नाउ यू शुड अंडरस्टैंड, ऑब्जर्व कि व्हेन यू आर प्रिपेयरिंग फॉर यूपीएससी, तो यू हैव टू गेट इनटू द डिटेल्स ऑफ द थिंग्स. You don't have to be scholar of course you don't have to be the scholar of constitution, but you need to develop an understanding as to how the governance of the country works and what role the constitution plays in it. Now you can see that it was again introduced in Lok Sabha in 2019, ठीक है, but 2019 में लोक सभा इलेक्शंस होने वाले थे, understood, and but it 2019 it never got to see the, like it never came into existence because Lok Sabha got dissolved and the bill lapsed. The bill lapsed. Now Article 107 and Article 108. Article 107, 108. 108 is on joint sitting, understood? And Article 107, Article 108 both talk about what? The lapses of the bills. Like what kind of bills will lapse when the Lok Sabha gets dissolved, because Rajya Sabha never gets dissolved. Okay. So there is a small chart I would like to make, that I would ask you to note down. Okay. Ki what kind of laws get dissolved, what kind of laws get lapsed, and what kind of laws does not get lapsed on the dissolution of the Lok Sabha. For example, oh sorry. We will make either lapse and does not lapse. Okay. On the dissolution of Lok Sabha, all the laws or all the bills pending in Lok Sabha lapse. Okay. Simple statement. That is, bills pending in Lok Sabha lapse. Pending in Lok Sabha lapse. Okay. Second one is, all the bills originating in Rajya Sabha and passed by Rajya Sabha and still pending in Lok Sabha lapse. ठीक है. A bill that originates in Lok Sabha, ठीक है, a bill pending in Lok Sabha lapse whether it originated in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. ठीक है. Second is, a bill that originates and passed in Lok Sabha, the bill that originated and पास्ड इन लोकसभा. ठीक है. लोकसभा मतलब लोअर हाउस में तो पास हो गया, फिर राज्यसभा के पास चला गया. अब राज्यसभा हैज नॉट येट टेकन एनी डिसीजन ऑन दैट, एंड इन द मीनवाइल द बिल गेट्स द लोकसभा गेट्स डिसॉल्व्ड. तो उस बिल का क्या होगा जो कि लोकसभा से पास होकर आया था? इट विल गेट लैप्स्ड. द बिल ओरिजिनेटेड एंड पास्ड इन लोकसभा एंड पेंडिंग इन, ठीक है, पेंडिंग इन राज्यसभा lapses. ठीक है, understood. Does not lapse. The first important thing about the bills which don't lapse are the bills for which the president has, the bill which is waiting for the president assent. The bill which is waiting for the presidential assent. ठीक है, presidential assent. Okay. The second thing is the bills for which the president has already notified a joint sitting. ठीक है, the bill for which the president has already notified a joint sitting, है ना, एंड अभी ज्वाइंट सिटिंग हुई नहीं और बीच में लोकसभा डिसॉल्व हो गई, तो दैट बिल विल नॉट बी लैप्स्ड. जैसे ही नई लोकसभा क्रिएट होगी तो दैट बिल विल बी कंसिडर्ड बाय लोकसभा एंड राज्यसभा इन द ज्वाइंट सिटिंग अंडर आर्टिकल 108. अंडरस्टूड? ये दोनों तो नहीं लैप्स होंगे. और क्या इंपॉर्टेंट चीजें हैं? अनदर इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग कि एनी अश्योरेंस, ठीक है, गिवन बाय, ठीक है, दैट इज पेंडिंग बिल्स एंड अश्योरेंसेस, पेंडिंग बिल्स एंड अश्योरेंसेस. अभी अश्योरेंसेस क्या होते हैं? If you have seen the proceedings of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, and whenever a minister is answering the question, he sometimes gives some assurances कि okay, I will look into this matter, I will look into this matter and I will furnish the information later in the house. तो ऐसा कह के मिनिस्टर बच जाता है. लेकिन there is a committee, parliamentary committee on guarantees and assurances. ठीक है, this is a parliamentary committee again. Why this is a parliamentary committee and not a cabinet committee? Because parliament का काम है executive पे check रखना. Okay, and this being a parliamentary committee looks into, yes, scrutinizes the assurances that the minister has given. ठीक है, for example, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways के minister, for example, he is Nitin Gadkari, he says something in the parliament, in the house of the Lok Sabha, and says that I will look into this matter and I will inform the house on a later date, and he actually does not do that. तो उसको scrutinize कौन करेगा? Committee on Guarantees and Assurances. ठीक है, तो अगर कोई भी assurance है और pending bills हैं जो Committee on Guarantees and Assurances के अंडर में है, वो वाले बिल्स लैप्स नहीं होंगे. अंडरस्टूड? तो दिस वाज अ ब्रीफ डिस्कशन अबाउट व्हिच काइंड ऑफ बिल्स लैप्स. अंडरस्टूड? फाइन. नाउ व्हाट आर द की फीचर्स ऑफ द बिल? द फर्स्ट वन इज, अगर डीएनए के, दिस बिल वाज ब्रॉट फॉर लाइक 3-4 मेन पर्पसेस. द फर्स्ट वन इज कि क्रिमिनल इन्वेस्टिगेशन, सिविल लायबिलिटीज लाइक पैटर्निटी टेस्ट, ठीक है, पैटर्निटी सूट्स जो होते हैं कि टू द हुज चाइल्ड इज. द थर्ड वन इज आइडेंटिफिकेशन ऑफ डेड बॉडीज. ठीक है, देयर आर लाइक एवरी ईयर देयर आर thousands of dead bodies recovered from railway stations, junkyards and debris and all these places. They are not claimed. ठीक है, तो what government does is government incriminates those bodies without any identification. They actually publish a notification in newspapers as to a dead body has been found. If anyone wants to claim the dead body, they can claim. So what government wants to do is, for these three major purposes, government wants to bring a data bank of the people, wants to make a data bank of the citizenry, and then it will be easier for the government to identify the dead bodies, and also it will help in a criminal investigation. But all the people cannot be asked to submit their DNA data into the criminal data bank or any kind of data bank that the government is holding, because of the fundamental law ki that will be violative of the what, privacy of judgment, privacy of individual, and privacy has of course been granted the status of a fundamental right under article 21 under the Puttaswamy judgment of 2016. Now अगर DNA analysis करना है तो first thing is importance is collection of DNA. First important article या provision regarding collection of DNA is written consent of the individual is required. For example, if an individual has been accused, है ना, तो he has to submit his DNA samples. But अगर वो person 7 years जो if the person accused is having, he has committed the crime, that crime carries a term of less than 7 years, then a written consent of the individual of whom the DNA is being collected for forensic examination has to be taken. That is, for example, अगर आपका 7 ईयर से कम आपने कोई क्राइम किया है जिसका पनिशमेंट 7 ईयर से कम है, तो आपका डीएनए सैंपल कलेक्ट करने के लिए आपका ही रिटन कंसेंट गवर्नमेंट को चाहिए. लेकिन अगर आपने कोई क्राइम किया है, फॉर एग्जांपल मर्डर, and because murder carries a higher sentencing than 7 years, in that case no written consent of the individual of whom the DNA sample is being collected is required. Again, written, if the person is a victim or relative of a missing person or a minor or a disabled person, the authorities are required to obtain written permission, okay, written consent again of such victim, relative of parent or guardian of a minor or a disabled person. ठीक है, मतलब people who cannot express their informed consent, उनके guardian से consent ली जा सकती है. ठीक है. However, if the consent is not given in such cases, okay, in cases में अगर consent, written consent नहीं दे रहा individual, then the police or the investigating authority can approach courts and then a magistrate can order the person to provide his DNA sample for examination. लेकिन is it not against the fundamental law of self-incrimination, Article 20, Section 3, that talks about the fact that no one can be forced to self-incriminate. That is, no one can be asked to provide evidence against himself. That is the foundation of the criminal justice system. ठीक है, कि no one can be his own betrayer. I cannot betray myself. Even if I committed crime, I have all the rights to protect myself. Okay, and that is the foundational principle of the criminal justice system. कि no one can be forced to file a testament against himself. But there are certain cases which say that fingerprinting, the submission of a fingerprint or the submission of a handwriting sample is not a self-incrimination, is not an act of self-incrimination. There are certain judgments of Supreme Court. We'll be talking about them later. ठीक है. For the time being, I hope you understood this collection of DNA. Now, use of DNA. Under the bill, DNA testing is allowed only in respect of matters listed in the schedule to the bill. The bill has a schedule. Most of the acts have a schedule. Like Parliament has many schedules. 7th schedule में distribution of powers mentioned है. Similarly, कोई एक्ट बनाते वक्त एक्ट का फ्रेमवर्क बनाया जाता है और उसके साथ शेड्यूल्स अटैच किए जाते हैं. इन शेड्यूल्स में बहुत सारे प्रोविजंस होते हैं कि कौन कौन सी पनिशमेंट होगी, क्या क्या होगा. ठीक है, तो देयर इज अ शेड्यूल अटैच्ड टू द बिल. उस शेड्यूल में क्या है? आईपीसी 1860. ठीक है, and for civil matters such as paternity suits. Understood? Further, the schedule includes testing, of course, individual identity, to ascertain individual identity, like for the dead bodies. अगर identity establish करनी हो, then also the DNA sample can be used for a person who is, like, for a deceased person or for a person who is mentally ill and he cannot establish his own identity. Then the police can take his DNA sample and make a forensic analysis of that, match it from the bank, the whole directory, the database of the DNA that the government might hold, and then he can be relocated back to his family. So basically, the third thing that the bill talks about is the creation of a DNA data bank. There is a lab of DNA lab in Hyderabad. ठीक है, DNA testing lab in Hyderabad. So what government is trying is, the government is trying to regulate all kind of DNA sampling, DNA analysis in India. अभी तक ये unregulated business है. ठीक है, तो फर्स्ट थिंग द गवर्नमेंट इज ट्राइंग टू डू इज कि जो भी एग्जिस्टिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है इंडिया में डीएनए एनालिसिस का, उसको इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज करना है थ्रू अ लॉ. द सेकंड थिंग इज फॉर द एस्टैब्लिशमेंट ऑफ अ नेशनल डीएनए डेटा बैंक एंड रीजनल डीएनए डेटा बैंक्स. Another important thing is the government is also asking through this bill that all the DNA labs that are present in India to submit their DNA samples that they might have, or the DNA database that they might have, with the data banks. But this is in stark contravention with the right of privacy. Because for example, someone went to establish a paternity suit, या like someone contested a paternity suit, ठीक है, अब उसका डीएनए सैंपल या उसका डीएनए डेटाबेस हैदराबाद की लैब में स्टोर्ड है कहीं डेटाबेस में. Now the government asks that lab to submit all the database to the national DNA data bank or the regional DNA data bank, for example. But now the database of that person, that individual जिसने paternity suit file किया था, उसका DNA अब government के पास आ गया. That is in stark contravention to the right of privacy. Understood? And the data bank will be required to maintain indices of the following indices categories of data. Indices मतलब एक बेसिकली काइंड ऑफ अ डेटाबेस, ठीक है. क्राइम सीन इंडेक्स, सस्पेक्ट्स और अंडर ट्रायल इंडेक्स, ऑफेंडर्स इंडेक्स, अ मिसिंग पर्सन्स इंडेक्स एंड एन अननोन और डिसीज्ड पर्सन इंडेक्स. यहां पे प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि अंडर ट्रायल्स का भी डेटा, डीएनए डेटा कलेक्ट किया जा सकता है. अंडर ट्रायल्स आर नॉट क्रिमिनल्स until and unless they are proven one. But what if a person who is under trial, his data has been collected by government, है ना, इट वॉज फॉर क्रिमिनल इन्वेस्टिगेशन, बट अभी तक वो अंडर ट्रायल है. व्हाट आर द प्रोसीजर्स दैट ही माइट हैव टू फॉलो टू गेट हिज डेटा रिमूव्ड फ्रॉम द डेटा बैंक? दैट इज अ मैटर ऑफ कंट्रोवर्सी. ओके, removal. Now we are on to the important thing, that is removal of DNA from the DNA data bank. The bill states that the criteria for entry, okay, the bill states that regulations will be issued under the act. ठीक है, जैसे अभी मैंने बताया कि once act is, एक बिल है, बिल में बहुत सारे प्रोविजंस होंगे और इसके साथ शेड्यूल्स होंगे, ठीक है. फॉर एग्जांपल डीएनए डेटा बिल, डीएनए डेटा बिल के हम प्रोविजंस को पढ़ रहे हैं और इसमें शेड्यूल्स हैं कि आईपीसी वाली जो भी क्राइम होगा और पैटर्निटी सूट्स वाले क्राइम होंगे, उन सारे क्राइम्स को हम इन प्रोविजंस के थ्रू रीड डाउन कर, मतलब वी कैन यूज दीज प्रोविजंस टू अंडरस्टैंड या अप्लाई द लॉ ऑफ द डीएनए, लाइक जो भी बिल है उसके लॉज को आईपीसी और पैटर्निटी सूट्स को सेटल करने में यूज किया जा सकता है. वंस दिस बिल गेट्स formulated into an act, तो an act is basically a framework. अब हर एक्ट के अंदर में, मोस्ट ऑफ द एक्ट्स के अंदर में गवर्नमेंट रेगुलेशंस इशू करती है, ठीक है, लाइक ओके, ठीक है. तो रेगुलेशंस क्या होते हैं? रेगुलेशन मतलब हाउ दिस एक्ट इज गोइंग टू बी इंप्लीमेंटेड, हाउ दिस फ्रेमवर्क इज गोइंग टू बी इंप्लीमेंटेड इनटू द रियल एप्लीकेशन, ठीक है. तो द बिल स्टेट्स दैट द क्राइटेरिया फॉर एंट्री, retention and removal will be issued through the subsequent regulation that might come after the government has enacted an act. But यहाँ पे एक problem है कि the bill itself goes through a parliamentary scrutiny. The bill will go through the parliamentary scrutiny. But the regulations will not be issued by parliament but by the executive. The executive will issue regulations under the act once the act has been enacted. But therefore, the regulations will not be considered by the opposition in the parliament. That means government may escape the parliamentary scrutiny while issuing regulations, and that is a concern. The bill provides for removal of DNA profiles. However, in certain circumstances, the bill provides for removal if a suspect police report is filed and court order is given. ठीक है, if the अगर किसी सस्पेक्ट का पुलिस रिपोर्ट फाइल की जाती है एंड द कोर्ट ऑर्डर्स, द मैजिस्ट्रेट ऑर्डर्स कि यस दिस पर्सन डीएनए शुड बी रिमूव्ड, देन द डीएनए फ्रॉम द डीएनए डेटाबेस बैंक विल बी रिमूव्ड. और इफ एन अंडर ट्रायल इज एक्विटेड, फॉर एग्जांपल एन अंडर ट्रायल इज एक्विटेड, तो उसका डीएनए फ्रॉम डेटाबेस विल बी रिमूव्ड. बट इफ द अंडर ट्रायल गेट्स कन्विक्टेड, in that case the DNA will be not the DNA from the database will not be removed. Another important thing is on written request of persons who are not a suspect, offender or under trial. जैसे मैंने पहले एग्जांपल बताया कि कोई पैटर्निटी सूट अपना फाइल किया और उसको पैटर्निटी वेरीफाई करने के लिए हैदराबाद की लैब में अपना डीएनए सैंपल सबमिट किया. नाउ उस लैब ने अपना डीएनए डेटाबेस गवर्नमेंट के किसी डेटा बैंक को ट्रांसफर कर दिया, बट वो पर्सन ना ही अक्यूज्ड है, ना ही सस्पेक्ट है, ना ही अंडर ट्रायल है, तो ही कैन मेक अ रिटन रिक्वेस्ट कि माय डेटाबेस, माय डीएनए डेटाबेस फ्रॉम माय डीएनए फ्रॉम द डीएनए डेटाबेस ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट शुड बी रिमूव्ड, एंड इन दैट केस it will be removed. Okay. Okay. Another important thing that bill talks about is DNA regulatory board. Again, regulatory board means the one which regulates the process, provides for the establishment of a DNA regulatory board which will oversee DNA data banks and DNA labs. ठीक है, DNA labs को भी मॉनिटर करेगा, जैसे रेगुलेटरी अथॉरिटी है टेलीकॉम रेगुलेटरी अथॉरिटी ऑफ इंडिया, TRAI. It is under Ministry of Electronics, Information Technology and Communication. Similarly, what TRAI does is it oversees the mobile phone or telecommunication system in India, and it makes regulations, जैसे एंटी कॉम्पिटिटिव मार्केट ना हो जाए, मोनोपोलिस्टिक मार्केट ना हो जाए इंडिया में टेलीकॉम की, है ना, तो टैरिफ कैसे होने चाहिए, कंज्यूमर के क्या राइट्स होने हो उनको, मतलब इन तमाम चीजों को रेगुलेट करता है TRAI. सिमिलरली देयर विल बी अ DNA रेगुलेटरी बोर्ड which will manage the practices and the labs of DNA data banks and DNA labs. ठीक है, it will issue certain guidelines कि DNA labs should operate like this, DNA data bank should operate like this. Composition, secretary of DBT will be ex officio chairman. Ex officio means by just being the virtue of secretary of the Department of Biotechnology, he will become automatic chairman. ठीक है, expert in the field of biological sciences and director general of NIA and director general of CBI. Functions of the board will be advising the government on all issues, वो भी उसका काम ही यही है. Granting accreditation to DNA laboratories, मतलब अब DNA lab establish करने के लिए you will have to go to DNA regulatory board and you will have to go seek permission from them. ठीक है, punishments for disclosure of DNA information or using DNA sample without authorization, इन दोनों cases में there is a punishment up to 3 years and fine up to 1 lakh. ठीक है. What are the concerns? Selvi versus State of Karnataka. In this case, this was a very watershed moment for criminal justice system in India. The Supreme Court observed that narco analysis, lie detector test and brain mapping failed the test of self-incrimination under Article 20, Section 3. As I told, Article 20, Section 3 provides the right that no one should be forced to give a testament or a testimony against himself. अगर मैंने कोई क्राइम किया है तो I cannot be forced to be a witness of my own crime. ठीक है. Similarly, narco analysis, lie detector and brain mapping have failed. तो यहां पे एक कंसर्न है कि is the use of DNA not, like if I am the criminal and if I am forced to give my DNA samples, am I not incriminating myself? ठीक है. Lack of data protection law, of course, data profiling under trials which will be against the fundamental principles of justice because under trials are not guilty. Understood? Certain judgments on self-incrimination. This is very important and a very easy prelims question can be formed from here. As nemo debet prodere ipsum. This is nemo debet prodere ipsum. Is the principle that no one can be a betrayer, no one can be required to be a betrayer of his own self. ठीक है, मतलब I cannot be asked, I cannot be forced to betray myself. This is a fundamental principle of criminal justice, yeah, fundamental justice. Article 23 of course provides that one cannot be forced to self-incriminate. ठीक है, and it gives the right to silent. ठीक है, तो refusal to submit my DNA sample, can it not be counted as my right of silence? That is a question. Over any matter which tends to incriminate him. Again, Kanchan Bedi versus Gurpreet Singh Bedi, this was a paternity suit. Okay. Parentage of a child is question. Directing a person to go undergo DNA test does not amount to violation of fundamental rights. Okay, this was a position of Supreme Court ki फॉर पैटर्निटी टेस्ट, अगर पैटर्निटी टेस्ट एस्टैब्लिश करना है तो दैट डज नॉट गो अगेंस्ट द फंडामेंटल राइट्स, राइट टू प्राइवेसी, है ना, और आर्टिकल 21 उसके अगेंस्ट नहीं है. स्टेट ऑफ बॉम्बे, एज आई टोल्ड, गिविंग द सैंपल ऑफ like handwriting sample or giving my thumb impression, although in larger picture it amounts to submitting sample against myself, but it does not amounts to self incrimination, because the court believed that mere giving of sample, है ना, mere giving of sample या mere giving of fingerprint is not a circumstantial evidence of a crime. ठीक है, तो इसलिए it should not be considered self-incrimination. But writing a testimony against myself कि हाँ मैंने ही ये crime किया है, that is self-incrimination.